is it?
Good evening. Today is Monday, July 7th, 2014. We're meeting for the purposes of the regular meeting of the Elmhurst City Council. At this time, I'd like to invite members of Troop 14 from Visitation School up to help lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Whenever you're ready. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Very good. Thank you. Clerk Spencer, I'd ask you to please call the roll to establish a quorum.
Gutenkopf. Here. Deuter.
Here.
Dunn.
Here.
Leader.
Here.
Polumsky.
Here.
Graham.
Here.
Hipskin.
Here.
York.
Here.
Levin.
Here.
Healy.
Here.
Conquist.
Here.
Kennedy. Absent. Mulliner.
Here.
Wagner.
Here.
13 present, 1 absent.
13 present, 1 absent. We have a quorum. On to agenda item number 2, presentations. Before I ask Mr. Vanderloot to step up and provide us with an update, I just want to give the council an update on what we're going to see this evening. GMA architects have been working now for several years, I think 5 or 6 years at this point, have been working with the city on the parking deck. In a few minutes, you're going to hear from Louis Vanderloot. He's an architect with that firm. He's going to walk us through 5 versions and some of the thought process that went through and led up to where we are today. I know we have at least 10 versions floating around, but we didn't feel it was necessary to walk through every single process we took to get to this point. This is actually an added step in the process, a little different from what we did on Larch. During all of the conversation and discussion that we had up here on the dais, a few aldermen requested that they be kept up to speed after the zoning and planning process and after the approval of the council as to where we were with design. So that's what we're going to see tonight. You're going to see really designs that incorporate a collective of all comments that have been received over the last several years, city staff, elected official, and the public. Most recently, the city held 2 public meetings on the last 2 Mondays in which Mr. Vanderloot and city staff came and presented a variety of boards. At both of those meetings, both verbal comment and written comment were taken in, and there was actually versions, updated versions throughout this process that were designed, and you're going to see a couple of those tonight. Some of the broader concerns or statements that were made during the conversations on this were helping the building fit within the downtown area, not making it look like a parking garage, and try to break up the facade a little bit to see if you can make it fit with the rest of Elmhurst. And I think the final product where we're headed looks great. Tonight, I'm hoping to get just a consensus out of the council that we're headed in the right direction. At some point, we have to turn it over fully to the architect, the experts on this. I think the best way I can put it is a camel is a horse that was designed by committee. At some point, you have to let the experts take over and lead us in the right direction. They're gonna be the ones that know which brick fits best with which, and I think you're gonna see a result of that hard work tonight. So without any further ado, I would ask, where did he go? Oh, there he is. Louis Vanderloot, is that correct? Did I get it correct?
You got it, man.
Louis Vanderloot, who has been involved not only in this process, but he actually flew up from St. Louis the last 2 meetings just to solicit public input and get to the design where we are this evening. So, Mr. Vanderloot, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Council, thank you for having me here tonight. The first couple slides I'm going to go through is more just to set the stage for everybody to make sure we're all on the same page. The first handful of slides are from the original Planning Commission submission that was done in December 2013. This is just an aerial view of the garage with the Addison Avenue improvements and looking at the donut in the center just to make sure everybody's in the same location. This plan here, drawing here, is the first floor plan. This is is the final plan layout of the garage that shows the 16,000 square foot approximate retail on the first floor, location of the handicap stalls, the entrance off of Addison, both in and out, where the ramp location is, and where the stair towers occur off Addison and then back off Schiller Court. This was the final layout that was done. As the mayor mentioned, there were multiple iterations of the plan itself in addition to the elevations. This was the final layout that we then built all the elevations you're about to see off of. The next two slides are actually just to reset the stage. This was the Planning Commission submission that went in back in December. This was the result of, at that point, 3.5 years worth of elevations. Comments from staff, comments from the public, comments from interested parties that was involved. This was part of the collaboration when part of the garage was office, taking the retail, trying to get the scale to fit right with what was in Elmhurst. What you're seeing here, the top elevation is the Addison elevation, the bottom elevation would be off of Schiller Court. These two elevations you see here, the top one is what's on the alley. Once we had taken into account realizing what we were going to see above York Theater and trying to make sure that view was also pleasing. Obviously a little more parking garage in that situation. The bottom elevation is the north elevation that sits up against the auto clinic that you see going southbound on Addison. So the next three slides are what we brought to the first public open house 2 weeks ago. Option A, as we call it at that point, was a modified, cleaned up version of the planning submission elevations. Kept the same basic structure, same basic materials, just kind of resetting everybody so they knew where we were standing at this point. Option 2 and option 3, when you see them, were a result of us stepping back, looking at it, obviously continue to drive around Elmhurst, look at the buildings that were here, trying to find a better way for us to fit in with the neighborhood. One of the things that always kind of bothered us when we were looking at the project was kind of the scale of the project. So at this point, we started looking at ways to break it down, open it back up to the public as part of those conversations, and see if there was a way we could kind of bring the scale of the garage itself down. Part of that was opening some of the garage up to the remainder of the downtown district. Option C, again, modified the stair tower, opened some of the garage up. You can see where the scale of the garage, some of the pieces of the garage start to fall down. What came out of the first public meeting 2 weeks ago was there was a consensus that somewhere between option A and option C was the right approach. There was a lot of discussions about option C, about how by having the stair step of the garage follow the kind of the facades really helped lead the eye and kind of took some of the scale of the garage down, especially seeing right on Addison Avenue. What came up last week and what we brought back based on the comments from options A, B, and C was what we're calling option D, but also what we would propose move forward with on the garage itself. This was a collaboration of trying to mix the materials up, bring the scale down. As you can see, working from left to right, the elevation or top elevations of all the elements, stair step, they're not all consistent. So that from when you're looking at it from the eye and coming down the street, you're going to follow that stair step of materials. You're not going to necessarily follow the scale of the top of the garage. Having the different color materials, having the different color brick, changing colors in the precast, adding the awnings to the retail level is all an attempt to bring the scale of the garage down to more pedestrian scale and make it fit more with what's in downtown Elmhurst. What you're seeing on these two garages would be then the proposed wrapped elevations. The top one would be as you turn around and run across over the auto clinic on the north side. The south side would be Schiller Court. Again, trying to take those same materials and wrap them around the corner so it presents a cohesive building and doesn't look like quite so much like a Western storefront, for lack of a better term. So it appears to be, full buildings. That's actually the into the presentation. Like I said, we wanted to make sure you guys were aware of where we were and kind of the steps we got to get here. One thing to note, that while these are, we consider this final development of the elevations, as we get into construction, start working with the precaster, we're going to have slight modifications. We may be tweaking a window size, we may be adjusting the height of one of the elevations to get it to work construction-wise, but this is the design elevation that we'll be working off of.
Mr. Vanderloot, before we ask comments from the council, I'd ask you to go back one slide. One thing I just want to point out to council and folks in the audience is Mr. Vandersloot's cutting out a big chunk of the work that he did between option A, B, and C, and then you can go to the next slide, option D. What we have at the second public meeting, GMA actually came in with 2 other options that combined, so it was actually a growing set of comments that were added in. So and we said this at the beginning, there's tons of drawings. We've leapfrogged a little bit, but extra effort was made just even between the public comment, the public meetings that we had to incorporate some of the ideas. So actually at the second public meeting, we had 5 designs to consider and add on, and Mr. Vanderloot took all of the comments from both meetings, and that's what we're seeing in this final elevation.
Correct.
So, any comments or discussion? Alderman Brame.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for coming for the presentation. I already know this answer, but just so everybody's on the same page, going to the 2 previous open houses about the garage, the windows that are shown here, the dark colored windows are actual windows, and the rest of them are just open windows. Is that a correct assessment or
Correct.
description?
What you're seeing is the blue tint would be actual glass. What you're seeing in kind of what we call the punched openings, about where the mouse is sitting right now, would be a black mesh, similar to what is over at Lark Street now, to give the appearance of a window when you're going by it, so it's not an open void. So it'd be like what we're doing at Larch.
So a follow-up to that would be, if we decided to move forward with, at least maybe on the west elevation, of making all of those structures glass, what would be if there is any, would there be any downside on doing so? I know we talked about ventilation, but I would make the assumption, maybe incorrectly, that having the upper floors exposed would be the minimum needed for ventilation in the garage without an actual ventilation system. Is that an accurate statement?
It runs, per the building code, it runs on a floor-by-floor basis. Now, that being said, there are percentages that's allowed in the building code for what I can have open and not. Until we ran the final elevations, we haven't run those calculations to see exactly what the glass content could or could not be. Based on the calculation we ran on the planning commission elevations, it's possible we could add more glass to this facade. We would not be adding into the alley, we would not be adding to the Schiller Court. We're hesitant to add any to the north elevation against the auto clinic on the chance that at some point there's redevelopment done on that site.
Correct. And I would agree with that assessment. My personal view is, and I like this option D, this final option D, if you will, the 4th building from my left, actually, I think is a little bit higher than I initially saw at the last Monday, so that's good to see. My personal preference would be to see as much as possible on this elevation, the Edison elevation, as real glass compared to, mesh windows, if you will.
Certainly.
Thank you.
Alderman Mulliner. Alderman Mulliner, you're sitting over here tonight. We'll go with you. Alderman Healy.
Thank you, Mayor. My question is not specific to the facades, more, and it may be premature actually at this point in the process, but have you incorporated any stormwater management into the design at the ground elevation? And if so, can you speak to that a little bit, please?
Yes, actually what we've planned, I'm gonna go back a few slides, is underneath the handicap parking spaces, there's an underground detention planned at that location.
Okay. And when you say underground retention plan,
Buried under the pavement.
tanks, okay, so we have gotten to that level of detail, and we are planning on doing that at this point.
Correct.
And the capacity, do we have the capacities? Do we know that?
That's still in design. The information, what's shown there on the site is what we're approximating based on our civil engineer's preliminary calculations.
And do you know off the top of your head what that is?
Now, off the top of my head, I don't know.
Okay.
One of the things, if I may interject, one of the things that the architects are trying to keep in mind as well is budget, trying to hit the budget numbers that we've been discussing all along. Glass, for example, is one of the numbers that pushes that up, not only from a construction standpoint, but also from an ongoing maintenance standpoint. That could push the numbers higher. So we asked them to push these designs to the maximum in terms of what we expect to pay. But those are the kind of details that we would expect staff to keep an eye on while they get into greater detail.
Okay, so, I'm sorry, Mayor, is that specific to glass or underwater storage?
Glass and
or
underwater
any of
storage
it?
in general, but yes, I mean, they will maximize what they can, and we'll have a number. We'll get a number for you.
Thank you.
Alderman Mulliner.
I appreciate everything that's been done with this. I think this project's coming along very well, and I think that the designs that we've seen right now really put some thought into the character of downtown, and I think that's the critical thing. I think it looks good. I would like to just suggest that we move this thing forward with that type of a concept of a design, understanding that there's gonna have to be some flex in it, you know, based on engineering, et cetera. But I don't think, I mean, I may decide that I like yellow brick better, but I don't. You know, you guys know colors better than I do.
Okay, Alderman Gutenkopf.
Could we take a look at the footprint, the floor plan again?
Okay.
Do we know what the relationship of the building is to the current sidewalk width and how far that's coming out? It looks like the storefronts are staggered in and out. What does that look like?
Right now, it's nominally on the building, on the property line, building line right now. The front facade does have some undulation to it, anywhere from 8 inches to approximately 2.5 feet, based on where we are. The intention is to take each of the elements as you work left to right or right to left. The stair tower on the left-hand side would be the most proud, so it would be farthest into the sidewalk, and then everything else would start stepping back at that at 8 to 10 inch increments based on the precast. I mean, the worst case is best case is we'd be flat, worst case is we're a couple feet into the sidewalk.
I'm sorry, could you say?
2 or 3 feet into the sidewalk.
Into the existing sidewalk.
And part of that was the whole trying to get the relationship that we weren't flat, because last thing we wanted to do is have a 6-story tall, flat facade.
And so this is purely an aesthetic consideration. It doesn't have anything to do with how cars have to move through the
Correct.
garage space.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Alderman Brand.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know the presentation states that this is an if I could say the word, architectural design presentation, but last Monday, some of us, Alderman Deuter, myself, and others, were talking with yourself about non-architectural issues, being the color coding or some type of coding of the various floors, being bicycle parking, if you will, what was the others? Electric car parking, all these other various suggestions. Would you be able to speak to that tonight, if that's been considered, or where that is in the design of the parking garage?
We haven't gone much farther because we've got it on the list of things to tackle once we get past this. Where we're at with it currently and what's already planned is where the mouse is sitting right now. There's bicycle parking already planned for that location. Electric car parking would typically, and where we would plan on, is about where in those locations that's on the mouse now. Closest to the elevators on the second deck would be where we'd typically put it, more of a preferred parking place. Color coding of the decks is definitely something that can be done. Mr. Cobb and I actually discussed it last week after the meeting. That's something we'd handle kind of at staff level, once we got into the garage and got into the design. Where we color coded, how we address it, is it an art, is it kind of more of an art feature, is it just color coded? Something we'd take up during the design process at a later date.
Thank you. And one of the other items that were discussed by someone who showed up was the lighting aspect. Can you touch on that as well?
Again, it's one of those we'll handle during the design, mainly because we don't have the lights all selected at this point. It's something that I want to talk about with our electrical engineer. There's things we've done in the past, setting the lights themselves deep up into the precast tees to try and glare it. I've done several parking garages along highways and ran into the exact same problem of somebody walking by and not wanting to see the bulbs as you go by. So we've got it on the list to be addressed with our electrical engineer.
Thank you.
Very good. Any other comments or questions? Mr. Levin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It seems if we're at a design that doesn't seem to be any disagreement on, everyone seems to be appreciative where we are. Are we at the point now where the project moves forward between staff and the architect and?
Yes, we wanted to do a
Could you
final
come back?
touch base, because this is where they're gonna start spending money, buying precast items, stuff like that, putting orders in. We wanted to make sure there wasn't any major objections. They've certainly put in a lot of work and gotten a lot of feedback, but yes, I think we're at that phase. I think it'd be a great idea, when city staff and the architectural firm dig in, to come back with periodic updates. For example, the lighting is gonna be down lighting, you're not gonna see it from the street. We were able to, within budget, incorporate LED or those kind of details, or, you know, here's 3 options we looked at for stormwater detention. Here's the system that makes the most sense, this is the number we're going with, and this is the amount we can store. So, yes, that's what I think we're at that stage right now. I don't hear any objections, I hear just positive support, and that's really what we were hoping to do tonight, is get a consensus out of the council that we like what we see. There's some details we'd like to get and be kept apprised of, but really at some point, like I said previously, the architect has to work with the builders and come up with something that's on budget and meets what we're looking for. Alderman Gutenkopf.
I'd like to see the facade with the auto clinic next to it again, because I just want to understand that relationship of those 2 buildings. And do we have any, or will you be presenting us with any other drawings that show how this structure relates to the other buildings around it, how it looks in the block, what you'll be able to see or not see past it?
We did a set of that with the Plan Commission on the original elevation. We can certainly put something together again, forward it over, you know, to Mr. Kopp for distribution, for review. I don't have anything with me here tonight. As a point of reference, just on that top elevation where you see kind of the light gray area at the very bottom, that is the outline of the auto clinic up against it.
Wow. I do think it would be helpful to understand the aesthetics of this building with the existing structures that'll be visible on the streetscape, and I would like to see that.
Well, we do have that available. I know it was part of the presentation that was at the Zoning and Planning Commission.
With this design. Don't we have just sort of a block?
No, I think we actually have, we dropped it into Google Maps, a design similar to this. So can you go to the back elevation? You know, for example, I know that, I specifically recall we've got a picture of this dropped into the downtown.
Correct.
And what I'll call an east elevation.
Correct.
So that stuff does exist.
Well, with this new, the new sort of Addison
We can certainly
elevation.
provide that.
Yeah.
I think that's something we can do. I don't think it's, you're not asking to hold up the process at this point.
I'm not.
Okay. Certainly, that's something we can provide.
We can drop it in and send it back around for distribution, for review.
Okay, great. Any other comments? Alderman Braham.
Just that same elevation that Alderman Gutenkopf asked about, if you would, just for a second, one question. I assume it's related to budgetary. So the north elevation, that middle facade, is there a reason why we didn't just extend that to that column or tower at the end? Is it budgetary reasons, or?
When we worked on them last week, the more we looked at, and that is one of the areas that we want to explore a little more as we move to this next phase, was it too much of that side? You know, these last 2 elevations were they're back to kind of a first pass of what it was looking to that side. We actually had it extended that way to begin with, all the way to the stair tower. And the more we looked at it, it's like, is it too much? Is it not enough? Especially looking at the rest of the elevation being kind of more smaller, for lack of a better term, as we went through it. It's a spot we can definitely look at again.
Okay, it just looks from that elevation, I know, you know, it's the expectation of future development, but if we're going to the extent of 75 or even close to 90% at that elevation, why not just finish it off? You know, 'cause-
We definitely can look at it again. We had that as one of the options we looked at ourselves.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Any other comments? Great. I think we do have a consensus tonight. I think everyone supports this. I think it looks good. I'm looking forward to periodic updates from city staff, certainly a timeline. I know this final feedback we were hoping to get, but a timeline in terms of when we'll break ground, when we'll see some updates, when we'll get some of those details that we were asked for tonight. Looking forward to getting that from city staff and periodic updates. Okay? Very good. Thank you very much for all your hard work. I also want to thank all of the general public and the aldermen and all elected officials who came multiple times to those meetings and have provided verbal and written comments. I think they're all very valuable, and I look forward to the next phase of the project. On to agenda item number 3, receipt of written communications from the public. Is there anybody at this time who wishes to submit any written communications to the public? If so, raise your hand. Seeing none, we're going to move on to agenda item number 4. It's a public forum portion of our meeting. This is a part of our meeting where anybody in the audience has an opportunity to address the dais on any topic they so choose. We ask that out of respect for other people who are commenting and also the meeting and the work we are trying to do, that you keep your comments to 3 minutes, and we look forward to them. Clerk Spencer, is there anybody signed up this evening for public forum?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I'll start with Dean O'Brien, 790 Sailor.
Great. Mr. O'Brien, please approach the microphone. Name and address to get started for the record, and then we look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Dean O'Brien, 790 Sailor. First of all, I want to thank the 7 or 8 guys from Public Works that were out on my block today helping me solve the problem that started on Thursday night. I don't know, people probably aren't familiar with it, but our street's been torn up since November, getting a new force main installed. It's caused more problems than it's caused solutions so far. Mine started on Thursday evening, sewer backup, and had the Public Works guy come out, said there was nothing wrong with the storm sewer. Went all weekend with 10-second showers and not being able to flush the toilet. Had a commercial general contractor come out today and rod everything to the main as I was instructed by Public Works. Once he did that and I called back into Public Works, the person on the phone told me that it was my responsibility and there really wasn't anything that they could do. I had to get the plumber on the phone with them. They finally had somebody come out and rectify the situation. But I paid for 8 hours plus overtime for a person to rod basically gravel out of my sewer from things that have been done on the street, from the repairs that are being done. So I just want to point that out to everybody, that there needs to be some type of a plan or some more communication on what's going on with that project, because it's taken way too long. Things are not happening. I mean, I've been through 5 floods on that street. This particular sewer has never backed up into my house. It backed up into my house, overflowed the toilet on the first floor, and once again ruined my ceiling in the basement. So I've got damage, I've got expenses for this plumber to fix something that the city caused. And I just thought that somebody should be here to represent the people on my block to let you guys know that something else needs to be done to get this situation rectified. Thanks.
Mike Jessic, 748 South Washington.
Thank you, Mike Jasic, 748 South Washington. I'm here just to talk about the flooding real quick. I've been to some Public Works Committee meetings, some school board meetings, and city council meetings in the last couple months. There seems to be some dialogue going on between all the parties involved. I'd like to continue city movement and action, and it's my understanding that there was a meeting last week between the Park District Board and the city regarding the Burke report and the V3 plan, and I would just like to find out what was discussed and if there are any outcomes. Thank you.
Claude Pagash, 566 West Gladys.
Claude Puckett, 566 West Gladys. I don't know if we've seen finality on this garage or not. I'll publicly state I didn't want the garage and hope to stop it, but what we got right now is a parking garage. What I've seen is going to be a very costly parking garage and a very expensive parking garage to maintain. I can understand why now, why development planning change is what was sent down to them about letting Metro riders in. If you don't have some income for that garage, you're going to be coming here annually to maintain it. There may be some aldermen that would like more glass, but parking garages tend to move because the loads change as cars come in and out. To me, it really doesn't do much for this town. It's neither a parking garage nor a building. It's a combination of trying to be everything and being nothing all at the same time. Last week, one of the committee members indicated that people that are going to be building this thing are going to treat this town pretty fair. He talked about how much profit they were going to make. But we never talked about change orders. There are going to be change orders on this job. I know there are. And what's that percentage? And I do believe there was no mention of retention. You don't build buildings and not hold money back. So I got a garage I don't necessarily want. I'm going to pay for it. I'm going to pay dearly for it. We also have a contractor that happens to be project manager and architect and everything else rolled into one. Project managers are designed to look out for the interest of the owner. I don't know how this project manager is going to work out when he's all tied up with all the entities. Again, last week, there was a little discussion about Fenzel. Got a little heated. But the general discussion, and I'm curious myself, exactly what we pay him for. We've paid him now for the last 3 or 4 years, every 6 months. Well, I think the issue now can be settled because we have issued the treasurer's report. She has to indicate one way or another what somebody's paid for.
Mr. Pragash, I'd ask you to wrap it up, please.
Sure, Mr. Fenzel is the community marketing and should be referred to it as that all the time. They have nothing to do with communications. And why we still got them on a payroll, I have no idea.
Todd Benson, 391 River Glen.
Todd Benson, 391 River Glen. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, aldermen, city staff, fellow neighbors, and interested parties. A brief announcement for all of Elmhurst to know and continue to support the Elmhurst Farmers Market, which is vibrant each Wednesday morning from 7 a.m. until 1 p.m. on Villette, just east of York. It's orchestrated by the York and Villette Business Association with the help of the city and the Elmhurst Chamber of Commerce. Next Wednesday, the 16th, will be a great time to come visit. Not only will there be abundant cucumbers, blueberries, and other great things, but our great mayor, Mr. Morley, will be at the market, so come on by at 8 a.m. I believe there will be a tractor there and some other great things. I'm not sure everybody will get a chance to ride the tractor, but if you have kids, bring them by. They might enjoy that as well. Each week the market is in session until the end of October. We look forward to you coming to visit and finding locally fresh sourced goods. Thank you and see you next Wednesday.
Thank you.
That
Spencer?
concludes public forum as far as those who signed in.
Okay, very good. That concludes public forum. Is there anybody at this time who did not have an opportunity to sign in that wishes to address the council? Can I see a show of hands? Looks like we have 3 people. We'll start with Ms. Brenner. if you want to approach the microphone. And then I saw two others.
Tamara Brenner, 137 North Caroline. There's a few interesting things about stuff going on in the city that I read in the local newspaper over the last few weeks. So I just wanted to mention a couple pieces of those to you in case you didn't see them. June 19th from The Independent, there's an article about the Paragon project and how it wasn't clear whether it was going to be LA Fitness or Export. It turns out that apparently all along there was a possibility that it wasn't going to be LA Fitness, it could have been Export. They didn't know who the tenant was going to be. And one of the development people is quoted as saying, "I was told I shouldn't say anything," after being in a meeting with city staff. So it seems like city staff and the developer decided amongst themselves to withhold pertinent information prior to the zoning commission public hearing about whether zoning relief should be granted. Is this the first time, the only time this has happened, or has this happened before, and will it happen again? Also in that issue, June 19th, some things that are going on in the Park District is that the Park District hired V3 to conduct a peer review study of Burke's proposals. And I thought, you know, the word peer review, when did I last hear that? Oh yeah, that was during the zoning commission hearing when I testified and brought some issues to the attention of the zoning commission. At least that was my intent, to bring some issues to the attention of the zoning commission regarding the parking study. And I was told by a commissioner, asked by a commissioner, whether I had peer reviewed the questions I brought up. Well, it seems to me what needs to be peer reviewed is the parking study, which was paid for by the city after it made its decision to build a 690 space parking garage rather than before. The city paid a consultant to justify its decision, and it refuses to address questions related to the size of that parking garage based on numbers from that study. I brought those things up. They have been ignored and continue to be ignored. Peer review the study, or at least look at the numbers I brought to your all's attention. In the June 26th issue, going back to Paragon again, they're asking for TIF incentive money so that their return on investment won't be under 10%. Money in my bank accounts and other things is making 0.1% interest. I can't save money above the rate of inflation at all, and they need to have an investment rate of 13 to 15% that's funded by us, the taxpayers, rather than living with a 10% return on investment. Then, July 3rd, just last week, I found out, maybe I should have known sooner because this actually happened or started to happen in a meeting on May 22nd of the Zoning Commission, but now they're instituting new rules to set public time limits of 5 minutes. The commissioner chairman said that they're not targeting any person. I think temporarily I see that myself and at least one other person testified at length, probably longer than I should have, but there was a lot of information to present, and I asked ahead of time whether I could present it. So we're not targeting any people, but the timing is really interesting, isn't it? Last year or the year before, I actually sent a FOIA request to find out what the policies and procedures of the Zoning Commission were, and I was told there weren't any. Now, all of a sudden, we have policies and procedures which are going to serve to limit the ability of people who present opposing views to what the party line is to not be heard in completion. There's always a loophole for the commissioners to ask questions of those who are favoring their viewpoints and to not ask questions of those who have opposing viewpoints. So I think it's unfortunate that these rules have to be put in place. Hopefully there will be flexibility there. And it also is interesting that we've already made arrangements to escort unruly citizens out by the police if necessary. That's also mentioned as part of the discussion. Glad you're here, Mr. Ruth. The last thing I want to... Am I okay still? Okay. The last thing I want to mention is tonight we're going to hear a report about the city survey. Overall results are pretty good, but I noticed a couple of things in the city survey that I noticed from looking at the data, not from what I read in the narrative part, which is what I expect to hear from the city manager or the assistant city manager tonight. Parking is one of the questions in the city survey, and in terms of the relative rank of where parking sits as a problem that people see, it's near the bottom. Near the bottom of the list, it's not a big concern for people. I heard the chairman of the Chamber of Commerce say walking in today, the city survey is similar to what it's been for the last 20 years. Parking is not a huge concern. It's a concern, but not a huge concern.
Ms. Brenner, could you wrap up, please?
I am wrapping up. There was, and also, yeah, the comments, my one last thought is the comments in the survey if you read the comments, there are comments both for and against how the parking garage came down and for and against the size. The ratio of comments for and against are as they have been. Most people do not want this parking garage to be this big. A few do, most do not. You're building a parking garage oversized against the wishes of the majority of the public. Thanks.
I think I saw two other folks over here. Maybe three.
Tracy Fleischer, 736 South Washington. I guess I'd just like to say I'm making an assumption here, but I am assuming that most residents that flood would rather see, well, I wrote it down so it would sound better, would rather see water retention efforts made in regards to the parking garage rather than more glass or better lights. And again, I'm making that assumption, but I at least would like to say that. And I also had a question in regards to wondering if there was any progress being made toward a question and answer session in regards to the flooding. Thanks.
Kathleen Sullivan, 133 Pine Street. There's so many things that have been going on, it's so hard to pick which things to talk about. I think, first, Mayor Morley, thank you for mentioning the budget with regards to the parking garage and being mindful of the budget. I think being mindful of the budget is important for the city, not only with regards to this parking garage, but with regards to all things. Moving on to my next topic, but also mindful of the budget, is one of the reasons I am completely opposed to fines all is not only because of what they cost, but they don't do good quality work, and you've never really proven that in your committee discussions or here in the city council. So you need to figure out what you want to do if you want to renew their contract, which you're doing tonight. You really need to decide that, because there's money that can be spent on other things. And let me tell you what some of the other things are. 3 times in the last 2 weeks, 3 times. In the last 2 weeks, ending last Monday, so 3 weeks now, my street has been underwater again. It says in the Burke report that you paid $1 million for, that it's because it's a street that is prone to it because of the fact that, partly because of the way the land is put in there, but it also says that it's about a 10-year flood level of protection. And you say that the system is designed for 100-year levels of protection. At 10-year levels of protection in a 30-year mortgage, there's a 96% chance you're going to flood in your house, okay? Clearly, I'm above average then, because I flooded twice in the last 3 years, in 2010 and 2013. Even last night's rain, waking up and listening to that is terrifying, and you don't know what you're going to get up to in the morning. And the flooding is not only relegated to my street, it comes up in my backyard drain and halfway up my backyard. It was halfway up my driveway probably on the night, last Monday night. And that Saturday rainstorm, 0.8 inches, 0.8 inches, totaled a car on my block. We watched it get totaled because no one knew where the owner was. So it's causing all kinds of damage. It causes all kinds of anxiety for all of us, and it's not good for the values of this town. If what you're trying to do is improve the property values of this town, then improve the property values for everyone, and stop putting your water in our homes. Our homes are serving as detention basins for the city of Elmhurst stormwaters because your sewer system doesn't do it. Thank you.
We'll go with the...
Julie Gatesman, 886 Parkside. I just want to speak to the flooding once again, because Monday night was our anniversary and we had great plans, But we decided that we had to move them up an hour and a half and switch everything that we were doing during the night because it was gonna rain, and we, might not be able to get up our street to our house, but you never know what's gonna happen. So we did. Our street flooded. We had a police officer sitting there at Jackson with his floodlight for us. No pun intended for a floodlight. But he had to put a police line across the street so that no cars would come down the street because it was completely flooded again. But, you know, we like to have block parties, but we don't like to have flood block parties because that's the time when we see our neighbors the most is at night. In the middle of the night, it always seems to be. Every single neighbor is out there because we're all freaking out. What are we gonna do? Can we help the people? As we're going out to dinner, we've got 6 neighbors that have sloped driveways. Every single one of them is putting the dam by their garage door. We still, if you drive down our street, you'll still see the sandbags at the sidewalk for all the people on our block. They have the sloped driveways. Every single one of them has sandbags lined up on the sidewalk with wood going down the side of the driveways. Their cars are parked as high as they possibly can get them on the sidewalk because there's nowhere for them to park in their driveway. They can't park in the street. It's just getting ridiculous. You know, we woke up in the middle of the night last night. We're up at 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning because it's pouring rain outside, and we're starting to freak out. Are we gonna have to go outside? It's getting to be too much, and I know that you guys all know it, but I just need to reiterate it once again. Thank you for your time.
Oh, the man in the salmon shirt.
Good evening. John Quigley, President and CEO of the Elmhurst Chamber of Commerce and Industry, 300A West Lake Street, Suite 201. Since my name popped up, I thought I needed to jump up and note that in my conversation about the city survey with an alderman, I mentioned that the top 2 things are typically the top 2 things in the city survey. Residents would like their taxes to be lower, and they're typically unhappy with the traffic and how long it takes to get from one end of Elmhurst to another. I said nothing regarding parking, and to infer that I somehow did is false, misleading, and disingenuous. If an individual cares to eavesdrop on my conversations, please do not quote, or should I say, misquote me out of context. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else who did not have an opportunity to speak or sign up on our sign-up sheet this evening that wishes to address the council? Is this, sir, you wish to address the council?
I do.
Okay.
Kevin Colin, 133 Pine Street. Just want to follow up on a few other speakers, primarily my wife Kathleen. Our house first flooded in 2010, then again in 2013. Almost 4 years after the first flood, we don't have a plan, we don't see a strategy, we don't have a schedule for when this may get fixed. Mayor Morley, talking about the parking garage, you said you wanted to see progress, you wanted to see schedule. That's all we're asking for is what's the plan? There's no apparent strategy to those of us that are living with this. All we see is this large bureaucracy that's not moving. We'd like a schedule. When are you going to fix it? What are you going to do? There just doesn't appear to be any strategic plan. There doesn't appear to be goals, and with that, we're not getting anywhere. Thank you.
Very good. Anyone else who wishes to speak? Seeing none, we'll move on. That concludes our public forum portion of the meeting. Announcements. Any announcements from the dais this evening? Alderman Leader.
Given the announcement I'm going to make, which regards the police department, I think it's only appropriate that I put on a police hat while I make this announcement. Last week, my colleague Bob Dunn and I had the pleasure of attending an outdoor roll call of Elmhurst's finest on the leafy corner of Grantley and Walnut in the 2nd Ward. These 6 p.m. roll calls will be occurring on residential streets throughout Elmhurst all summer. The roll calls are interesting and informative and a great bonding experience between the police officers and the public. Your questions and concerns are especially welcome and will be fully answered. During the roll call, the officers are briefed on any current threats to the community. One reason for the interactive roll call is that the police want and need your input, cooperation, and understanding to make this an even safer community than it already is. This is a great opportunity to meet the officers who are directly responsible for the safety and well-being of your particular neighborhood, and for them to meet you. So when a flyer is delivered to your door announcing the next roll call near you, go. You and your kids will have a fascinating time, as well as perhaps an opportunity to meet Diesel, the Wonder Police Dog. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Very good. Any other announcements this evening? Alderman York.
Thank you, Your Honor. 2 weeks from this Friday, July 25th, is the date of the second annual Superior Ambulance Elmhurst Cycling Classic presented by Storino, Rommel, and Durkin. Racing starts at 11 and culminates with the family fun ride sponsored by Olympia Chiropractic, followed by the men's professional race at 6:30. We're expecting several hundred participants again this year and several thousand spectators to line the race course. The race course is the same as last year around Elmhurst College with the start-finish line at Wilder Mansion. We're looking forward to a great, hopefully cooler day of racing than we had last year, and hope to see everybody there. Information on the event can be found at our website at elmhurstcyclingclassic.com, and you can also sign up to volunteer and help marshal the race at that website. Thank you.
Okay. Any other announcements? Alderman Gutenkopf.
Well, since Alderman Leader mentioned the neighborhood roll calls, I want to remind First Ward residents, especially the Pick neighborhood, there will be a roll call tomorrow night at 6 p.m. at the corner of Thomas and Pick. And then on July 17th and 18th, again at 6 p.m., there'll be a First Ward roll call in the College View subdivision at Fairfield and Utley.
Okay. All right, seeing no other announcements, we'll go on to the consent agenda at this time. Is there anybody who wishes to remove any item from the consent agenda for further comment or discussion? Alderman Gutenkopf.
6.14.
I'm sorry?
6.14.
6.14. Okay. Alderman Bram, that takes care of you?
That takes care of my request, sir.
Got it. Anyone else? Alderman Levin.
6.9.
Excuse me?
6.9.
6.9. 6.14 and 6.9. Anyone else wish to remove Alderman Dunn? Anyone else wish to remove Alderman Dunn? No, let me add a comma to that. Alderman Dunn.
6.4 and 6.6.
6.4. 6.6. Okay. Any other items anyone wishes to remove from the consent agenda? Seeing none, I will ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda minus items 6.4, 6.6, 6.9, and 6.14. Motion to approve consent agenda minus those items. Motion by Alderman Hipskin, second by Alderman Dunn. Clerk Spencer.
Hipskin.
Aye.
Dunn.
Aye.
Leader.
Aye.
Polemski.
Aye.
Graham.
Aye.
York.
Aye.
Levin.
Aye.
Healy.
Aye.
Onquist.
Aye.
Kennedy absent. Mulliner.
Aye.
Wagner.
Aye.
Gutenkopf.
Aye.
Deuter.
Aye.
13 ayes, 0 nays, 1 absent.
13 ayes, 0 nays. That motion passes. Consent agenda is approved minus items 6.4, 6.6, 6.9, and 6.14. On to the first pulled item. Agenda item 6.4 is a report out of Public Works. Clerk Spencer.
It is therefore the recommendation of the Public Works and Buildings Committee that the existing home stormwater management policy as outlined above be approved. Signed by Jim Kennedy, Chairman, Chris Healy, Vice Chairman, Diane Gutenkopf, unsigned Michael J. Bram.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve the recommendation as read. Motion by Alderman Healy, second by Alderman Bram. Discussion, this is 6.4. Alderman Healy, you want to set us up on this one?
Sure. So this is the follow-up policy for stormwater retention. It's a follow-up to the new home policy. This is the existing home policy. Basically, what it says is that anybody that wants to add impervious surface to their existing property will be subject to the same formula. The formula that we have in the new home policy will be subject to the same policy if you add impervious surface. We do have in there a fee in lieu of, which is the second part that's also been pulled, 6.6, that if there are extenuating circumstances that a homeowner may apply for a fee in lieu of, and then of course the fee in lieu of policy sets an amount for what that can be. Pretty straightforward, based on the same methodology we use for new homes. I think it's a pretty good policy.
Very good. Alderman Dunn, you pulled this, you have a question?
Yeah, generally, I do support the report and the policy that's moving forward. I just have one small clarification with it on the minimum amount that would be required to install some type of stormwater retention or volume, and if that's fairly small, the way the report reads, even if it's just a few cubic feet, you would have to install that. Did the committee deem that to be worth the administrative oversight of reviewing that for potentially what would be a small, very small additional requirement? So that's the only question I had.
Alderman Healy, you want to share your thoughts on that?
Sure. We did talk about it, and really, when somebody's going to add impervious surface, you know, the smallest example I think that we could think of is a patio or a deck, and certainly we want to encourage those people to use pervious surfaces, brick pavers, et cetera. But if they chose to go the impervious route, regardless of how small, in my example, a patio is, there are methods out there that can be employed to offset that impervious, i.e. a rain barrel. So we as a committee felt that we didn't think that any amount was too small, and if there was a small amount, there are appropriate methods that can be used to offset that storage. We didn't want to create a minimum. If you go above this or stay below this, you're okay. We wanted to set the policy, follow the formula. That's what we did with new homes. And if you follow the formula, regardless of how much or how little, there's a stormwater management technique that can be employed.
Alderman Bram?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to clarify in regards to my name not being signed on the dotted line here. I was contemplating, I was on the fence of should I sign, should I not sign. I agree 110% with the policy itself. I just had some concerns over the inference, if you would, of talking about some of the other programs or policies we're discussing and tying it to this discussion and this particular policy. So if it's not too late, I would be more than happy to put my name on the dotted line. But I was just troubled by tying multiple programs that have not gone past the city council into a discussion and possibly leading a vote down a path that wouldn't be appropriate if they were passing this on the contingency of different programs that were in discussion. So.
Okay. Any other comments? Seeing none, I'll ask for Clerk Spencer to call the roll.
Healy.
Aye.
Bram.
Aye.
Hipskin.
Aye.
York.
Aye.
Levin.
Aye.
Honquist.
Aye.
Kennedy, absent. Mulliner.
Aye.
Wagner.
Aye.
Butenkoff.
Aye.
Deuter.
Aye.
Dunn.
Aye.
Leader.
Aye.
Palumski.
Aye.
13 ayes, 0 nays, 1 absent.
13 ayes, 0 nays, motion carries. Agenda item 6.4, the report is approved. On to agenda item 6.6. It's another report and recommendation out of Public Works. Clerk Spencer.
It is therefore the recommendation of the Public Works and Buildings Committee that the residential storm sewer fee in lieu policy as outlined above be approved. Signed by Jim Kennedy, Chairman, Chris Healy, Vice Chairman, Michael J. Bram, and Diane Gutenkoff.
I'll entertain a motion to approve report as read. A motion by Alderman Healy, second by Alderman Bram. Alderman Healy.
Thank you, Mayor. So this is the follow-up, and what we tried to do here as a committee is recognize that, especially with older homes, mature landscape, et cetera, there may be situations where the amount of retention needed may be beyond the scope of a piece of property for various reasons, and some of those are listed in the report. We wanted to make sure that we had a method by which city staff, through careful determination, could allow a homeowner who has to apply for a fee in lieu of option to grant the ability to not fully hold the water on site. Very restrictive, there's a policy, there's a form, has to the homeowner, property owner has to go through. We require that the homeowner burden themselves to the maximum before fee in lieu of can be employed. So if there is a piece of land that can be employed, we want them to use that before they ask for fee in lieu of. We made sure that staff has a way to report back to us, and it's in the report, that we will know as a council how much of a fee in lieu of is granted. And then finally, the $13.50 per cubic foot amount. If you look at the various options that are available for stormwater retention, $13.50 is definitely on the high end of the scale. As I recall, there was only one option that was more pricey than that, and that was a concrete vault underground. So we wanted to make the fee in lieu of pricey. We wanted to make it not as attractive, but we also wanted to make sure that when there's an extenuating circumstance, we do have a way to grant a homeowner relief and then apply the money they'd have to pay directly to the stormwater fund. So that's what we tried to accomplish there.
Very good. Alderman Dunn, you pulled this one as well.
Yeah, just again, I think this is an important policy worth a few minutes discussion, and I generally think it's a good policy. What I'd like clarification on is the term variance versus the fee in lieu of. Is someone able to ask for and be granted a variance and not have to take certain steps and also not have to pay this fee, or is the variance strictly to allow them to pay a fee instead of doing?
Alderman Healy?
No, thank you, Mayor. No, there is no, it's either or. Either you adhere to the policy and provide stormwater retention, and if the homeowner applies for relief from that, then they have to pay the fee in lieu of. There is no getting out of putting stormwater in or paying the fee or nothing. It's either or.
Just to follow up, there is some text about the variance and how that relates to the DPZ committee, and when does that come into play for a homeowner?
So what that references is currently the DPZ committee is discussing maximum lot coverage. So if there's if DPZ, for example, sets 60% lot coverage and a homeowner requests to go to 62% of lot coverage after DPZ has set 60, we as a council approve 60. Again, this is example only. They would need a variance to go to 62%. And then this policy would still kick in to the 62%. In my example, they still would be required to cover up to the 62%, or if they weren't able to, pay the fee in lieu of. So the variance specific to DPZ is giving deference to that policy once it comes out, so that this policy works in conjunction with that policy. There will be no variances through the zoning and planning process with the stormwater policy per se. It's lot coverage once that policy is set.
Alderman Levin.
I think it'd be helpful when the city attorney writes this up, and this is a point we've struggled with or addressed at least in DPZ, is that the term variance is probably not the one to use. Maybe it's relief from the policy or something, because as we've looking at a later date, bringing I think it's the Architectural Advisory Commission and the Building Commission into looking at a new Architectural and Building Commission that would look at relief without, from certain of the policies that we might bring forth in a week or two from DPZ that do not mean you're going through an actual variance process as you would for a zoning change to go all the way to the Zoning and Planning Commission, but I think that it's variance-like relief.
Noted. City attorney is working on that.
Whatever makes the attorneys happy.
Okay. Any other comments? Alderman Hipskin.
A question for Alderman Healy. In the previous policy, you gave a great example about the rain barrel. Do you have a example around the $13.50 cubic foot? And if that's too complicated for right now, I can follow up with city staff.
As I recall, it was approximately $8 to $9 a cubic foot for a Coltech system like those used on Pine. I do not recall off the top of my head where $13.50 was one of the more expensive options, as I recall. But I know concrete vaults were 21, 22 something. This was the second highest. I just don't recall. It's the average? Fellow committee members tell me it was the average of the various things we looked at.
Thank you.
Seeing no more comments, I'll ask Clerk Spencer to please call the vote.
Healy.
Aye.
Graham.
Aye.
Hipskin.
Aye.
York.
Aye.
Levin.
Aye.
Honquist.
Aye.
Kennedy absent. Mulliner.
Aye.
Wagner.
Aye.
Gutenkopf.
Aye.
Deuter.
Aye.
Dunn.
Aye.
Leader.
Aye.
Palumski.
Aye.
13 ayes, 0 nays, 1 absent.
13 ayes, 0 nays, that motion passes. On to agenda item 6.9. That is ordinance Z0082014. Clerk Spencer.
An ordinance granting a conditional use and variations at the property commonly known as 624 North York Street, Elmhurst, Illinois. PIN number 03-35-204-012 and 03-35-204-009. Paragon Elmhurst Center LLC.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve the ordinance as written. Alderman Levin with a motion, Alderman Palumski with a second. Alderman Levin, you asked that this be pulled from the consent agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I pulled it from the consent agenda because I would like to offer an amendment, and the amendment in writing is been placed on the dais for each of the aldermen to see.
Does everyone, before you continue, does everyone have a copy of the red line that was distributed at the beginning of this meeting? Okay. Alderman
So
Levin.
I think to start off, I'm going to move that the ordinance be amended as shown on the exhibit.
I think that's the cleanest way. Assuming everyone has a copy. Clerk Spencer, do you have a copy of this?
I do, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Mr. Levin, if you could walk us through the changes. Oh, yeah, we have a motion second to amend. Alderman Mulliner with a second. So we have a motion to amend based on the handout and the red line. And Alderman Levin, if you can go through it and the reasonings behind it.
Thank you. As you may recall from our discussion when the report came out, there are some variances here tied into the LA Fitness signage setback, and that is not affected by anything in the amendment. There was also a conditional use. The conditional use was with the intent that the applicant was going to put a Starbucks facility or store in there that would have a drive-through window, drive-through service. I talked to the applicant just before the last meeting, and I felt there was a need to tighten it up a little bit so that the permissiveness of a drive-through facility wasn't for anything that might go there, but it was really tied into what the concept was, which was a coffee shop. The applicant agreed initially, and I think thought about it a bit more and had a problem with it and brought it to my attention. I think the intent of what we were trying to accomplish is better accomplished through this amendment, and that is that it is a conditional use for a drive-through facility for a Starbucks or other restaurant that has the same kind of characteristics, so that if Starbucks came in for 2, 3, 4, 5 years, and Seattle's Best or whoever else is another coffee shop came in as a subsequent tenant, they wouldn't have to go through the whole process again. So the First Amendment is looking at, Than Werner went through all of his planning buddies, zoning buddies, and found something out of Massachusetts that is a definition for a coffee shop kind of facility, which you see, and that change is the same change that's made throughout. So the intent is to limit it not to just any kind of drive-through, but for a coffee shop facility and not tying it just to a Starbucks. The second change is really cleaning up a mathematical issue. When the applicant went through the zoning commission and through our committee, they specified a specific number of spaces they would put in, and when you divide it by the number of square feet, it was approximately expressed as 6.5 spaces per 1,000 square feet, and it's actually more exact, 6.4 spaces per square feet. So you'll see that change in a couple places throughout the amended ordinance. I did check this with City Attorney Storino, and it's permissive to, or it's legal to do this amendment with those kinds of changes without bringing them back to committee, and for that reason, I'd ask that the amended ordinance be adopted.
Okay. Alderman Plumsky.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to add that the committee, when approving a conditional use for a drive-through, if they don't impose conditions on it, that drive-through can stand for future uses like a bank or some other type of use. So the purpose of tying that to, at first, Starbucks, and after speaking with city staff, a coffee shop is really just to keep it as that use. So that was, I think, the intention. Thanks.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Alderman Bram.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As we discussed this last week, I didn't comment about my reservations, but I will so now. Reservations tying these variances, the variances specifically to the LA Fitness, I do understand tying the conditional use specific to, i.e. Starbucks. We've done that in the past. We really haven't tied variances in the past to a tenant like LA Fitness in this case. I'm not going to hold up this process with that concern. It is a reservation I have, but not to that degree. But I do want to ask.
Alderman Bram, question for you. Is your concern or your comments addressing the motion to amend with regard to the coffee shop, or is it with regard to Paragon within the agreement?
I see where you're going, Mr. Mayor.
Would it make sense to vote on the amendment first? And I'm just asking.
I was getting to that second piece but I shouldn't have actually stated about the LA Fitness piece.
Got it.
Is where you're going, and I concur. So I'll go to the Starbucks piece. I'll ask the direct question of, at this time, because we've heard even some residents make comments of this development and what's going in, what's not going in, who knows who doesn't. At this time, is a Starbucks coffee shop going in if this conditional use for a drive-in, and it also says in here, and/or drive-through, moves forward?
That is the ultimate goal, and they're pretty far down the road, is my understanding from the applicant. The LA Fitness export, that I do not believe was although it was suggested, I don't believe that was an issue when it was before the Zoning and Planning Commission. That is something that developed when it was coming before DPZ and Finance. So it's an LA Fitness firm and final, and the only person they're talking to is Starbucks, and they're working on a contract. That's my understanding.
Follow-up to that. On page 4, it goes in decent detail about an informal restaurant, primarily offering coffee, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And what was crossed out was coffee house. What is the rationale for
I think
coffee house?
it's a better definition, one that Mr. Werner and talked to city attorney. It's a better, broader definition of what a Starbucks or a Seattle's Best is.
You're not a coffee house?
I think you would appreciate more detail, Mr. Bram.
I do appreciate detail, Mr. Mayor. Okay, that is really all my questions in regards to this amendment.
Great. Any other comments or questions as it relates to the motion before us to amend with the red line in front of us? Seeing none, I'll ask Clerk Spencer to please call the roll.
Levin.
Aye.
Mulliner.
Aye.
Wagner.
Aye.
Gutenkopf.
Aye.
Deuter.
Aye.
Dunn.
Aye.
Leader.
Aye.
Palumski.
Aye.
Graham.
Aye.
Ipskin.
Aye.
York.
Aye.
Healy.
Aye.
Honquist.
Aye.
Kennedy absent. 13 ayes, 0 nays, 1 absent.
13 ayes, 0 nays, motion to amend carries. Any further or additional comments as it relates to the now amended ordinance?
Do we need a motion now, I believe, to?
Yeah, I think we'll take a motion to approve the revised ordinance. Motion from Alderman Levin, second from Alderman Palumski. Any additional discussion? Clerk Spencer.
Levin.
Aye.
Palumski.
Aye.
Graham.
Aye.
Ipskin.
Aye.
York.
Aye.
Healy.
Aye.
Honquist.
Aye.
Kennedy absent. Mulliner.
Aye.
Wagner.
Aye.
Gutenkopf.
Aye.
Deuter.
Aye.
Dunn.
Aye.
Leader.
Aye.
13 ayes, 0 nays, 1 absent.
13 ayes, 0 nays, motion carries. On to agenda item 6.14. This is a resolution. Clerk Spencer.
A resolution authorizing the execution of a consulting agreement between Feinzall Community Marketing and the City of Elmhurst, Illinois.
Okay, this is a resolution that came out of a report from DP&Z. I'll ask for a motion to approve the resolution. Motion by Alderman Levin, second by Alderman Palumski. Alderman Levin, you care to address, or do you want to see what the comments are?
I think we've covered it in sufficient detail.
Okay, Alderman Gutenkopf, you pulled this. Any comments you wish to add?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to reiterate my concerns with this company, with the quality of their work, the level of professionalism that I've seen them exhibit when they present at committee meetings. I find them inappropriate to represent the city of Elmhurst. I am adamantly opposed to continuing this contract based on a multitude of factors, and I do not want to see Elmhurst represented by this business, irregardless of the city hiring a staff person now to do communications. I think that clearly is a separate issue, but I think the city is not well represented, and I do not support this contract.
Okay, any other comments? Alderman Bram.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll just do an abbreviated version of what we discussed 2 weeks ago for the report. I don't see a need for an extension, especially an extension to this degree of 6 months. I have some of the same concerns that Alderman Gutenkopf just stated, but I'm specifically referencing the need for any long extension. We've debated this 2 weeks ago, and we debated it 6 months and 2 weeks ago approximately, and there was a lot of concurrence of once this marketing coordinator position was in place, that therefore this would be a shortened agreement, if an agreement at all, moving forward with this particular company. So I cannot support this, and I hope that others will not as well.
Okay. Clerk Spencer.
Levin.
Aye.
Palumski.
Aye.
Graham.
No?
Hipskin.
Aye.
York.
Aye.
Healy.
Aye.
Conquest.
Aye.
Kennedy, absent. Mulliner.
Aye.
Wagner.
Aye.
Gutenkopf.
No.
Deuter.
Aye.
Dunn.
Aye.
Leader.
Aye.
Looks like 11 ayes, 2 nays, and 1 absent.
11 ayes, 2 nays, motion carries. On to agenda item 7, reports and recommendations from elected officials. Mayor Morley, couple of items. One, I'm pleased to announce that the wonderful magazine Family Circle, which has been in circulation since 1932, in their infinite wisdom, has named Elmhurst one of the 10 best towns for families in the entire United States for 2014. We are glad that they recognize what we already do. It's a nice feather in our cap. 2, it's been mentioned by a couple of aldermen. We are doing neighborhood roll calls. I know we've been getting great feedback from the public on it. A couple of dates were announced. I'm going to announce a few more and then also ask anybody who's interested, sign up for email alerts from the city or go on our city website. There was one this evening at Pick and Thomas, same one that Alderman Gutenkopf mentioned, again tomorrow night. July 10th and 11th, Avery, at the corner of Avery and Beverly. July 14th and 15th at the corner of Church and Fairlane. All roll calls are at 6, and the plan is for them to be over at 6:15. Hope to see you all out there. Thanks, Chief, and everybody for a great job. Sustainability Task Force, we've been getting a lot of applications. I have named an executive committee to help me pull together and go through the over 20-plus applications that we have. In fact, I bumped into someone on the street the day after I had that meeting. Yes, we are still taking applications, but we are moving forward on that. And then the other thing I'll mention as it relates to flooding, stormwater mitigation, and planning just in general. There's a lot of moving parts in this. I think things are moving pretty fast right now with both the city, the parks, and the schools. I said it at the last meeting I was at, and I'll say it at this meeting. Please continue to come to our meetings and voice your opinion. Please continue to come to our committee meetings and voice your opinions, and certainly offer you to share those opinions with the other elected officials. As it relates to, and one note I'll say about the press, my friends in the press. These folks have a difficult job. They are covering a meeting that lasts sometimes an hour, 2 hours, 2.5 hours, and they've got to whittle it down to 6 paragraphs. It's not a bad idea to get some of your information from the press, but if you want additional details, by all means, please contact your elected officials. It's the best way to do that, and I encourage you to do so. And I know City Manager Grabowski actually has some additional information as it relates to stormwater. You want to talk about stormwater first or citizen survey?
Yeah, I'll address some.
Okay, that concludes my report.
Thank you. 2 items before I get to the citizen survey. Dan Leahy, our new communication staff person, started today. So if any of the aldermen want to have a conversation with Dan, please give him a call and set up a time. He's happy to meet with anybody to talk about any items, issues, concerns that you have. Secondly, the stormwater meeting that was mentioned by Mr. Jasek in public comments is actually tomorrow. It wasn't last week. It's tomorrow with the Park District, and that's members of the communication committee that the mayor put together. Following that meeting, well, I should say, and what we're going to talk about at that meeting is the V3 peer review that was done, and also Christopher Burke's response to those comments. I put something at your position tonight, but it was pointed out to me that one of the pages was missed in that. So I do have new copies for the council. If you would please take one, pass them down. I'd appreciate that, and I apologize for that oversight on the first one. Following our meeting tomorrow, it was requested by one of the communication committee members from the Park District to have a tour of the McKinley Avenue pump station at the creek. And I believe he just wants to get a better feel for how the system works, And so we will have staff members from Public Works there to explain the whole system to those present. And I will report on that after the meeting as to any new information on that and how we do that. Next, I would like to present the results of the 2014 Citizen Survey.
Alderman Bram.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Before we go to the citizen survey, I just wanted to interject. A resident was here tonight from Sailor making mention about possible work that we're doing on Sailor impacting his private residence. My understanding, and this is why I'm asking for this update now, is that that sanitary force main on Sailor is in progress of being hooked up, but they're two separate systems, and one cannot and will not impact the other system, and therefore would not impact a private residence. Is that an accurate?
As I understand the situation, that is correct. I'm looking into it. I've asked the Public Works staff to get back to me on what exactly happened and where those are, but they are two separate pipes that are in question here. That's correct.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure everybody was aware of that and make sure, and confirm my understanding is that there were two separate pipes, two separate systems at this point. I know we're in the progress of hooking them, the larger sanitary force main up, but I would find it highly unlikely, I'm not an engineer in that realm, but highly unlikely that one would impact the other. So thanks for that clarification and for the additional follow-up.
Yeah, I think his concern was that maybe the construction activities have impacted the other sewer. That's what I think his concern is. So we'll be following up on that. Alderman Wagner brought that issue up earlier today to me. On to the citizen survey. The city has conducted this survey, an in-depth survey, every other year since 1994. It provides an indication of the citizens' perceptions of quality and value of services provided, as well as their observations regarding the community's strengths and weaknesses, problems that they feel the community will face in the next 5 years. The survey was mailed on March 19th of 2014 to 1,600 randomly selected residents from the city's water billing database. A reminder notice was mailed on April 2nd. Completed surveys were accepted until April 21st. And as in previous years, the city experienced a very high response rate, we're happy to say. A total of 717 completed surveys were returned for a response rate of 44.81%, which is up slightly from 2012. Here's a map of generally the percentages of response as divided into the 6 quadrants that we use. Red dot's a little hard to see, but gives you an indication of how evenly spread the random surveys are throughout the city. Here's the response rate, as I said, slightly up from the last time we had that. And now on to key indicators or major findings that we have. Most of the quality of life ratings remain strong in the city. And I'm going to be brief on this. If you want more detail, please stop me. Otherwise, the results are online on the board doc site, so you can review them there as well. Ratings for overall city operations are up significantly from the 2012 survey, from 68.44% of good to excellent to 74.49% of good to excellent. I look at that and say that the city staff certainly took that to heart in 2012 when we saw the results. I sat down individually with department directors and talked to them about how city services and operations can better be taken care of, and certainly the perception is that we're doing that job. I'll go back to that. However, I would say that the survey does indicate some of our challenges that we have ahead of us, and one of those, of course, being that the stormwater management and flooding. Residents rated that as being one of the biggest 3 problems that Elmhurst will face in the next 5 years. And that has slowly been coming up through the categories. and it's into the top 3 at this point. One of our other challenges, before I get to that, one other key indicator that we found is that the city's website has grown as a place to access information and make payments. Most residents indicate they get their information, however, from the Front Porch newsletter. Interesting, even though we continue to add to the website and board docs, most people get their city information from the Front Porch newsletter, which has been consistent throughout the years. So, as I said before, the overall quality of life in Elmhurst remains very high, with 99.29% the report ratings in the fair to excellent range, and ratings in the good to excellent range increased to 96.05, which is the highest rating ever achieved in this category. Ratings for Elmhurst as a place to live also remain high, as do ratings for the community as a place to raise children, which of course the mayor just talked about with Family Circle magazine. Ratings for neighborhood quality are up slightly and remain consistent with ratings since 1998. The ratings of good to excellent continue to improve, showing positive increases in the last 2 surveys. The question of overall quality of life versus 5 years ago saw a shift from ratings of about the same and worse to ratings of better. And after declining for 6 years, the ratings for Elmhurst as a place to retire increased this year, with 53.6% of respondents rating this category as good to excellent. A couple of department issues I'll touch on. Ratings for the service level in the fire department are back to previous levels after we saw a dip in the 2012 survey. Response times, quality of service, and professionalism and courtesy for ambulance services increased and remain rated highest among all categories in the city. Interesting, as we talk about the police activity with the community roll calls, ratings for police visibility in both individual neighborhoods and in the city as a whole increased from 2012. Good to excellent ratings for police visibility in the city as a whole recorded the highest rating ever, moving from 76.8% in 2012 to 84.8% in 2014. One of the most significant results of the survey for Public Works was the decrease in ratings for street maintenance and street condition. I got ahead of myself there. I can't say this is a surprise with the winter that we just had and the fact that in previous years of declining budget levels, I believe the street paving was one of the rubber band issues that we used to try to make current budgets balance. I think everybody knows in the last budget, though, we increased that amount. We're trying to catch up now. Instead of 5 miles of paving, I believe we're doing 7 miles, and so we will continue to catch up on that. Another police issue that increased in the ratings was traffic enforcement. The good to excellent category increased from 74.4% to an all-time high of 77.7%. I think, as aldermen, you all know that's one of the issues that you hear consistently throughout the neighborhoods is that we don't have enough traffic enforcement. I think that's being seen that we are increasing that level, and that's tied directly to the visibility within the neighborhoods. As I mentioned before, ratings for the condition of streets declined measurably, with 52.9% of the residents rating street conditions as good to excellent, and 88.5% rating conditions as fair to excellent. These numbers decreased from 64.7% and 91.8% in 2012. But again, we are addressing those issues. On to the slides that are on the screen now, and that's ratings for commuter and shopper parking remain constant, while ratings for city center parking convenience and availability decrease slightly. And then convenience and availability in the city center continues to suffer, with 57.1% of residents reporting parking as being good to excellent, which are consistent with the 2012 results. Now, in terms of where residents shop, this is I think, a fairly consistent graph that you've seen year to year. It may have changed slightly with the closing of Plass Appliances, though. And in terms of where residents shop outside of the city center, Elmhurst Crossing area at Route 83 in St. Charles continues to be popular, followed by Butterfield and York, York and Villette, Spring Road, and new in this survey, the North York Street, north of North Avenue area. Again, not a surprise to anyone. I think that automobiles, groceries, and dining are very high that people stay in town for. Electronics, large appliances, sporting goods, home goods, people have to leave town. So we will certainly work in our economic development efforts to increase the choices that residents have to stay in town. This is always an interesting category as well, and again, probably not a surprise to us that looking at what folks feel we don't provide enough service of, and a couple of them focus on stormwater. Stormwater management, rear yard drains are certainly high. Street maintenance, again, comes up, and then sidewalk maintenance after that. So I think we're addressing those through the programs that we have, trying to make headway on the stormwater and the rear yard drain program, as the Public Works Committee has addressed. Before I get to the general comments, I'll just comment on a couple of the Section 7 cultural attractions for the community. That ratings for the library services remain high, with 100% of residents rating library services in general as fair to excellent. Generally, library use has increased, but reasons that residents use the library is changing is what we found, that more residents are using it for meeting room space and a place to work or study. I believe that the library is aware of that and are making changes in that regard. In talking to Mary Beth, that's the director of the library, they are increasing their meeting space because they recognize that. Back to communications, survey shows that more people are using the city website, as I had said, and ratings for the usability of the website have gone up as well. And the ratings for the quality of the city newsletter were also up this year. We're happy to report. I touched on the 5 highest not enough service ratings, stormwater management, rear yard drain, street maintenance, of course, being the top 3. Under general comments, what we found is that the central location, quality of life, and quality of schools continue to represent the 3 things that people like about living in Elmhurst. When asked about the top 3 things residents like least about living in Elmhurst, the vast majority of people listed taxes, and that's consistent from year to year. The second and third rated least liked categories include stormwater management and cost of living. And again, that's one where stormwater management has slowly been coming up the list. When asked about the 3 greatest problems facing Elmhurst in the next 5 years, citizens again cited taxes, cost of living, and stormwater management. The results of the citizen survey are organized on the website in 5 sections. First is a summary of the survey results. Section 2 shows a breakdown of the actual responses given. Section 3 lists all the general comments given by respondents. Section 4 shows the response history of the survey from 1998 through the 2014 survey. And then Section 5 is a copy of the actual survey instrument used in 2014. Obviously, there's an incredible amount of information on this. I just wanted to give you a brief oversight tonight. Well, what we'll do with the survey is that we'll use it as a tool in developing future budgets. We'll share it with the school district, the park district, the library, and city center. We will highlight it in the front porch. We will post it, we've already posted it on the website and have it available here at City Hall and at the library for review. We will continue to use it as a method to track citizen use of and satisfaction with city services. And last, I would ask that the mayor and city council consider using it as we prepare the next budget, the goals and messages from the staff. That concludes my report. If there's questions, we're happy to answer them.
Thank you, Mr. Grabowski. Thanks for the highlights. Any comments or questions? Alderman Levin.
One of the points of interest to me was the demographics in section 11, noting that the over 65 age group had 32% of the respondents, and the 46 to 55 was almost 25%, so it's 57% in those two age groups. I'm wondering if the younger group is too busy with raising children, or if we need to consider when we get 2 years down the road, maybe finding a way to offer this other than paper, offering it to, maybe Fines All could work something up, I don't know, but, or whoever. But I think it's something to look at if we remember 2 years down the road, to see if we can find a way to find out what is of concern and interest to the people that are in that under 45 age group.
Okay, I don't think he's looking for a comment. Anyone else? Oh, we do? Okay.
We do offer the response online. People have that option. We have not sent it out exclusively electronically due to lack of emails in the way that we select the residents, the randomness through the water billing, but there is an option to answer it online. I don't know what that percentage is of people that answered it online, but I can get that to the council.
Thank you. You don't have to provide it, I just want to make sure you're looking at it. Thanks.
Alderman Polemski.
Thank you. There's a significant increase in people's concern about substance abuse, and I was wondering, does that coincide with what police is seeing for incidents that they have to respond to related to substance abuse? Or, you know, is it maybe a question for another time? And will we be seeing a budget reflective of that concern, that maybe more interest in substance abuse prevention?
I'd prefer to talk to the chief about that and get back to you on that one.
Alderman Hipskin.
I'd love the chief to address the council at the appropriate time when prepared on that.
Okay. Alderman Brand.
Thank you. I was actually going to speak to Alderman Levin's comments. I wasn't aware that we do the citizen survey online as well. I would agree with Alderman Levin. I would personally like to see us make more of an effort to advertise that and maybe do a trial on and off year of online only to try to get further participation. The results that we get for the citizen survey is probably for the most part better than what we sometimes see in voting. But I would like to be able to hit 50%, and it does seem that the younger generation isn't responding as much as others. So I think online would definitely be a way to get our percentages up.
Alderman Gutenkopf.
Oh, just a thought based on the percentage of respondents, because I don't think we've pointed out enough that the 44% response rate that we get is phenomenally high. The industry standard response rate for this kind of survey is 10%. So as much as I appreciate that we should be reaching out as broadly as possible to make sure that we're hitting the demographic mix that is representative of our city, I do want to commend the city staff for somehow managing to connect with these really engaged residents and have a response rate that I do think is worthy of note.
Okay. Any other reports, or is that it for you, Mr. Grabowski?
That's it for me.
Any other reports or recommendations from appointed or elected officials? Seeing none, I'll ask, seeing none, we'll go on to other business. Any other business at this time? Seeing none, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn. Alderman York with a second by Alderman Mulliner. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? We're adjourned. Thank you.